Hello, good evening, friends. We are with one more CXO Roundtable conference. This time we are having a very, very relevant topic, financial discipline and planning in hospitals, connecting the dots. And we are lucky to have Shobana Narayanan as our moderator for the day. Shobana is the Chief Operating Officer of Chennai Ortho and Spine Center, an exclusive bone, joint, and spine center in Chennai. Shobana is a representative of CAHO Healthcare in the healthcare division. She has completed the prestigious IIM Bangalore Goldman Sachs 10,000 Women Global Initiative for Women Entrepreneurs. With a BTech in IT and an MBA in healthcare and hospital management, that too with Coventry University, UK, her journey so far has been very enlightening and refreshing. She has special interest in women empowerment and children well-being, with technology in the forefront, and does volunteering in the local community. So, Shobana, over to you to lead the rest of the session.
Thank you so much, Father. It is indeed an honor to lead this session. Good day, everyone, and welcome to the virtual CXO Roundtable on financial discipline and planning in hospitals, connecting the dots. As we all know, one of the key ingredients for a successful business is financial discipline and planning to ensure long-term success and sustainability. Interpreting and negotiating the financial elements of planning, controlling, organizing, and decision-making is key to good healthcare infrastructure and care delivery. The right kind of assistant at every stage in financials can help to bridge gap in access, quality, and cost of healthcare. On this note, I would like to introduce our first panelist, Mr. VENKATA NELLURI, Head HSBU Chennai, Fortis Healthcare Limited. Today, he will be talking on the decorum of discipline to be followed during the decision-making of seeking financial assistance as a healthcare unit. As a decision maker, what are the critical parameters to be considered before and after taking the assistance? Over to you, sir. Any questions, participants, please post it in the Q&A session.
So thank you so much, Team CAHO, for giving this opportunity to me, particularly Father Johnson, Sam, Dr. Vijay, Lalu, and all good friends in CAHO. And I'm really excited to be a part of these programs in future as well. So to start with, let me just apprise you, just refresh you with Niti Aayog's recent study, which reveals that the healthcare industry is valued today in India at around $62 billion. So that is the present status of healthcare valuation by Niti Aayog, and it is booming. It is booming in India. So when we talk about healthcare loans, apparently every healthcare organization will look at one point or other, will look at improving their infrastructure, bringing in newer technology, acquiring newer talents, and this will come at a cost. So I am here to talk about what are the types of loans that are available for healthcare organizations, what kind of loans we will be seeking from bankers and other financial institutions, what are the reasons for which we will be taking the loans, what are the good and bad motivations that will drive us to get loans, and also the importance of timing in getting a loan and paying back the loan. So if you go to the types of loans, we have working capital. We all agree that today our cash flows are almost 50% because your credits are 50%, your cash flows are 50%, even in smaller towns where you have this large component of your business revolves around the state-run healthcare programs, health insurance programs, where your cash flows are much lower than a metro city. So we definitely need cash flows, okay, for our hospital to sustain, because we work on margins between 20 to 25% EBITDA. So 80% of your payouts are in cash. Even if you take credit limits from your vendors for a period of 60 days, that will only be around 30% of your entire, top line. So still you need around 55 to 60% cash flow to, sustain your business by paying to your doctors, etc. in time, your staff and your electricity, your fuel costs, your administrative costs, your equipment, CMCs, AMCs, etc. So working capital is one loan, which financial loan that you would be taking. The other one is medical equipment and assets. As technology drives healthcare today to a larger extent, and we all know we have to be updated about technology, and to expect good clinical outcomes, okay, we need to get good talents, and the talents might insist on good technologies to give good clinical outcomes. So it is inevitable in most scenarios. So medical equipment and assets, okay, are another financial liability that we will be looking at to go for loans. And then infrastructure. Obviously, it's not confining only to constructing a building or a floor, but also in terms of creating facilities within an existing hospital, like converting a general ward into an ICU, or adding up a theater complex, or creating an infrastructure for accommodating any newer equipment, etc. Then obviously for any new project, it is project finances. Okay, you are starting a new hospital, a clinic, diagnostic center, whatever it is. And then bank guarantees when you are going for certain equipment, that and letter of credits when you are buying equipment from abroad, okay, or securing some loans, etc. So why do you take loans? So why do we need loan? Basically, to start a new business, okay, a doctor or who is already in the industry has his own name, or a group of doctors or an industrialist, whoever it is, who has interest in starting healthcare business, they may come up with a hospital or a diagnostic center or any other infrastructure which is relevant to healthcare. So starting a new business is one thing. Then expanding your operations. So you already have a successful business and you are seeing some good returns in that, and you see opportunities in in other geographies. For you have good bandwidth and you have brand equity in those geographies, and you already have an established business that is running and giving results and profits. So you will be expanding in the newer geographies, and you need funds, and you go for loans. And then you have some existing loans, okay, at a higher rate of interest. So if somebody is giving you loans at a lower rate of interest, you may be prompted. Okay, you will probably see value in that. Okay, you can say a few thousands, a few lakhs in that. So you will go for newer loans to substantiate your existing loans, and then turn around a sick business into a profitable business. So when you talk about a sick business, you have to do a complete due diligence. Okay, it's not just one person, but then you have a team of people. It can be the physicians, it can be the financial experts, it can be the administrators, it can be the bankers. So you need to have a group of, a layer of a good cream of professionals who analyze the sick business and give you suggestions and give you a business case scenario where your ROAs, and you can turn around the business. In such case, you will be seeking certain loans. So these are primarily the top reasons why we take loans. And why we take loans, and what are the motivational factors that drive us to take the loans. When we have an opportunity, that is primarily the reason we see an opportunity, and we have a good business plan, and a definite ROI plan, then it will be a motivating factor, and we will be looking at getting a loan. And the second one, as I was telling you, expansion, where you already have an established business and you want to go for it. The third is you are getting a very resourceful clinician or a surgeon or a team of doctors or whatever it is, some kind of a clinical expertise that you are getting, which is very unique or which is very talented, and they are going to come to your facility, and their requirements might drive you to expand your infrastructure or acquire some equipment in the form of new technologies, and that will be driving you to. So these are certain definite motivating factors, okay, which will be exciting for you and that will drive you to get into a loan. So what are the more bad motivations? What are those impulsive things that you get into? Sometimes we get into an impulsive mode and you take unilateral decision, yes, we will do this. So shiny objects. Somebody is in your vicinity, has started, or you bought some good equipment, or he added up 20 more beds or 50 more beds. And you think that he is your competitor when he could do, why can't I do? And you will go for loans. And sometimes you burn your fingers. You really don't know what is his source of money. You don't know what is his business model, what are his priorities and how he is going to pay back. But just looking at the opportunity that the other gentleman, the other competitor has, okay, you cannot put your feet into his shoes and burn your fingers. So that is a bad motivation or an impulsive way of, getting into this. And then is credit pressure. So you have some credits already existing and you are desperately under need of cash flows, and you get some loans from your bankers because you have some good relationship with them, or you have some good friends who are ready to fund you with a higher interest rate just to mitigate that pressure of credit, the existing credit. You may be impulsive, or it's a bad motivation that you just go ahead and get the loan at a higher interest or something. That's a very, very bad idea. That should be the last resort. First, you have to introspect, okay, and re-engineer your own systems and processes to ensure how your business can be turned around within the existing financial and other resources, and see that your credit pressures are reduced. Okay, so that would be a better way of looking at things when you are under credit pressures, rather than going for another loan and making it a larger liability for yourself and the organization. So the similar way, debt consolidation, and most importantly, in some scenarios, I have also seen loans are taken for some purpose in some pretext, and they are diverted for some other purposes. Like you want a 7 Series car, you get a loan, and you will be diverting it to get a 7 Series car. And these things will result in NPAs, that is non-performing assets, or the institution will suffer, okay, at one point of time due to these kind of impulsive and bad motivational loans. So similarly, what are the other important factor in getting loans? Obviously is the time. I have seen in several instances, just because you know somebody in a financial institution, or somebody is pressurizing you because there is an year end or there is a special, rate of interest. So they will drive you to get loans for your new project, but your new project has not taken over. You need some more time, and you go for an early loan and you start paying interest. That's not a good idea. So you have to plan it right. And it should not be too early, and it should not be too late. If it is too late, then you will be again spending from your own resources, and it will be pushing you into a bad credit in front of your vendors and other things. So it should not be too late either, or too early. Both the places you will be burning out your cash flows. So it is always better you plan ahead, you make your projects specifically, and have your timelines clear, get your statutory compliances cleared, and make it viable for yourself when you have to start. And that is the time you have to go for the loan and get the loan in the right time, so that you will get some holiday in terms of, repayment of your, in some cases, you also get repayment holidays in the form of, capital as well as your loan, your interest. Principal and interest, both you can get holiday periods. So that will be very helpful for you. So timing is very important. Just don't be in a hurry and get your loans too early, or just don't be relaxed, okay, and get it too late, and it will land up you in problems. So I'll tell you the scenarios that we have. Even today, I receive calls from some of my friends who own hospitals across India, somebody in Andhra Pradesh, some in Telangana, some in Tamil Nadu. They have these huge oxygen plants they bought for 1 crore of rupees during the COVID. They bought CT scans. And at that point of time, they were making big money because apparently every patient who drops into your hospital was requiring oxygen in the second wave. And the other thing is CT scan at least twice during their stay. But today, it is a big liability for them, because these hospitals does not require CT scans or oxygen plants of that magnitude, because they don't have that load capacity. So your electricity, most of them are from small towns, medium towns, and there is a lot of electricity problem. They have to run the hospitals on generators at time, and there will be huge fuel and power costs involved in this. Then you also pay to maintain the equipment, CMCs, and they don't come very cheap. There will be anything between 6 to 10% if it is an AMC or a CMC. So that is an additional burden on the organization. And maintaining these things on a regular intervals are also very, and also the specific manpower. You don't need, an X-ray technician cannot run a CT scan. So you need a CT technician who comes at a premium cost. So these are certain things which are impulsive in nature. But however, the standing testimony that nobody has lost their monies in COVID. One example is the government of India has given a blanket 50,000 crores loan to the hospital industry, particularly and more specifically to smaller towns other than the metros, to a tune of up to 100 crores for each unit for infrastructure development or equipment purchase or developing new hospitals in smaller towns other than the metros, any towns other than the metros. But to my surprise, only 5% of these loans have been utilized, and the timeline for this also is over. This was offered by the central government during the COVID for the other. They were expecting more COVID waves, and they have given this leverage, but unfortunately only 5% of the total 50,000 crores have been utilized by the healthcare industry. That shows that everybody who has been a part of the COVID have made good monies, and they never needed money. They never needed loans. So coming back to the industry statistics, I got to know that the NPAs in healthcare are much lower than any other industries. So that's a good sign. That is why people prefer any financial institution, bankers or non-bankers. They prefer healthcare as their most, preferred industry for dispersing loans. And that's one good thing, that we are very good at paying back our loans. And most importantly, the loans that are taken for equipment. The equipment loan market in India is close to around 30,000 crores. And there is a very minimum NPA in that particular sector. So that makes us understand that when you buy an equipment, obviously you do a good ROA, you do a good case study and an ROA, but we fail to do the same thing when we are going for infrastructure development. So that is one thing which we have to be careful. I come across hospitals which are built by a single doctor or a couple, okay, who had a roaring practice, and they built out of proportionate hospitals of 100, 200 beds, and then they realized that they cannot fill these beds. So you have to have a definite business plan. You should know what would be the occupancy that you can get within 2 years, and what are the kind of doctors you are going to onboard, what will be your RBOP, what will be your top line at 60% occupancy, at 80% occupancy, at 40% occupancy, and what will be your EBITDA, and what is that comfort zone that you can pay back your loan and the term of loan. So these are certain things which you really have to be definite about when you are going for loan. And it is not a bad idea as an administrator being in this industry for 27 years. In my career, there is no hospital I have seen who have not got any loans. Everybody will take loan because there are certain advantages also in taking loans. But to what tune of your turnover has to be your loan component, what should be the term of it? My next speaker, who is a financial expert, he will probably apprise you about that. So this is all from me as of now. And you have any questions, I'll answer it towards the end of the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Well articulated on the subject of how to look at opportunities and when to take the plunge and when not to. Our next speaker, Mr. SIVARAMAKRISHNAN R, is the co-founder and CEO of Syndicate. He will be talking about the nuances of efficient capital management in today's context, the measures to be taken to achieve the right quantum of financial assistance. And he will also be touching on the topic of sources of financing. Over to you, sir.
Good to be part of the session today. It's always a pleasure to be part of the session that is organized by CAHO. So I've been doing a wonderful job, and thanks to Father Johnson and Shobana ma'am, and of course Mr. Sam for taking this up to great heights. Well, it's been about 20 years of career in financing and investing across multiple asset classes, and one of those asset classes is healthcare. We have done quite a lot of that. We today manage about 1,100 crores of corpus across mainstream investments, including healthcare. We have funded quite a lot of hospitals, businesses in healthcare, both from a technology point of view and also the regular hospitals that are operated in different parts of India. There has been a significant change in the way businesses are being run in healthcare over the last 5 to 6 years. But one thing, let me tell you, my friends, there is something that has never changed. It never changes in management of businesses. It is to achieve growth in business, number one, right? Achieve growth in business, number one. And number two is to be profitable, right? These are two essential aspects of running a business successfully. So success means growth and also being profitable. This essentially brings us to important pointers in managing businesses. You may run hospitals of scale, you may run diagnostic labs, you may do whatever you are doing today. And you may add more beds, you may have more patients. Finally, all that gets reflected in two things. One is the top line, the revenue numbers, right? So long as the revenue numbers keep growing, it means that you are growing a business, right? You may do all that harakiri out there, but revenue doesn't grow. Finally, it doesn't matter. You haven't seen growth or there. And number two, we have seen a lot of people running businesses. And you know what happens? Sometime around August or September of every year, there is somebody called, I'm a chartered accountant by qualification, but talking about my own fraternity, auditors come around, to audit the books of accounts of the hospitals. And it's only at the point in time talking about the SME hospitals, typically small and medium enterprises. We come to know as to whether the enterprise has been profitable or not only around the time of August or September. And by which time another 6 months of the next financial year has gone by. So much of water has gone down the bridge. Therefore, to have a proper assessment of business is to understand how the business is faring on a monthly basis, right? Have your profit and loss in place, have your accounting done. This is a starting point. Have your accounting done regularly, have your monthly P&L done, have your monthly balance sheets done, so that you will really know as to whether you're growing your business, first of all, and number two, whether you're profitable or not. Now, what is this all about? Profitability all about? What are we talking about in terms of profitability? Well, let's put it in simple words. profitability can be conduced to, two simple things. One is the return on equity and return on capital employed. So what is return on equity and return on capital employed? Let me just pull out a couple of slides from some of the presentations that I made earlier. Now, return on, these are two important measures, return on capital employed and payback period. So whenever you're going to start a project, when I'm going to take a beat, putting up a new facility, I hope the slide is visible. Is it visible out there? Shobana, could you?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So, when you're going to put up a new project, be it putting up a new cath lab or putting up a new facility or doing brownfield, greenfield expansion, whatever it is, these are two essential factors. One, you need to calculate the return on capital employed in your business. That is, for every pie of money that you're going to be investing in business, what is it you're going to get back out of that? That measures the output of investment, right? Without knowing that, what's the point in making investments out there? And number two is the payback period. How fast are you going to get the money back to yourself? If you're not, these are two very, very, very essential factors that all professionals, all entrepreneurs need to calculate before making any sort of business decision. Now, let me tell you, let's expand it a little bit. What is ROC? What is return on capital employed all about? It's nothing but as simple as, in very simple terms, the profit that you make out there in your business divided by the total capital employed. So what is this capital employed? Capital employed consists of two components, my friends. The first component is the component of your own investments in your business, that is equity, right? And the second one is the money that is borrowed from banks or financial institutions. To combine these two, equity and debt, or equity and borrowing together, that makes it capital employed. So operating profit divided by capital employed is return on capital employed. Now, what should be the ideal return on capital employed for a business? You're going to look at it in a minute's time. Now, what is this payback period? Now, let me tell you where return on capital employed can be higher. Return on capital employed can be higher typically when you're operating on an asset-light model. So to give an example in the context of hospitals, so I think a couple of years back, somebody came to us and said they're going to be expanding a hospital and they needed a loan they wanted to avail a loan. Why? Because they wanted to buy the entire property out there. We asked them this critical question, which I think every hospital owner needs to ask himself. Are you in a real estate business or in a hospital service industry? If you're going to be in the real estate industry, it's good to own a property out there. But if you're going to be running a services business, it's all about providing healthcare as a service. Do you really need to own a hospital? Do you need to really own the land and building out there? Perhaps you don't need to, because the return on investment on a cath lab or on an ophthalmology facility or all these equipment that you're going to invest is far higher than your investments in land and building, my friends. Please note this point. Investments in equipments pay back much faster than the investments in land and building. Therefore, an asset-light model will ensure that the return on capital employed is quite higher, right? And the next one is payback period. Payback period is simple, very, very simple calculation. It's nothing but the overall investment that you're making in a project divided by the annual cash flows. Let's say you're investing about 10 crores in a project, just stating an example, and the monthly net operating profit that you're making out of the project is about 2 crores, right? Now 10 crores divided by 2 crores, 5 years is a payback period. Simple and straight. Now let's understand as to what could be an ideal payback period for hospital. Can you guess that? If it's going to be, hospital has got actually long gestation in recurring capital out there. So you can take this as one typical measure of return on capital employed. Return on capital employed in your business got to be more than 20%. It has to be more than 20%. And your payback period must be less than 4 years. Why? Why are we talking about these figures? Can I give an alternative? No, as I said earlier, new production units, if you're going to be putting up a brownfield facility or you're going to be adding some equipments, the return on capital employed in those things will be much higher. Payback period much faster than investing in an absolute entirely new facility, right? Now, given this context, let me tell you something interesting. You know what? If at all, we are all investors in business. We invest across multiple business. Healthcare is an important part of it too. Now, if I don't need to run a hospital, I own many hospitals. How is it? I'm shareholder in quite a few hospitals. Now, if I have been a shareholder, let's say in a hospital called Apollo Hospital, right? And I had invested about 15 years back. You know what? I would have made about 15% return on capital on my investments, right? Now, what I have given out there is nothing but my money only. I haven't given my sweat. I haven't made any efforts out there. It is the management out there who's running the hospital. Now, giving my money alone has fetched me about 15 to 18% returns per annum. Now, please note this point, my friends. Over there, when you run your hospitals, when you invest in your hospitals, what do? You invest your money, you invest all your efforts, stress, strain, your sweat out there, right? Money plus all your efforts together. Now, shouldn't the return on investment be more than the return that you would have made if you had invested in the stocks of Apollo Hospital, which would have fetched you 15 to 18%? Doesn't it sound logical? Therefore, if your investments can fetch you 15 to 18%, investments plus efforts all put together should definitely fetch you more than 20%. The problem is that in our society, we don't keep calculating these figures because we run for the day, we run for the week, we run for the day, we just keep running around. Right? Just stop out there, calculate these figures to see where you are, stand where you are. And when you make a new investment in a new project, please do calculate. Now, the important question that one needs to ask yourself and all of us is that, is borrowing bad? Many of us say, well, you know what? I'm not able to sleep happily, sleep peacefully when you have loans on my head. Right? It's something that all of us keep saying. Is borrowing bad? The answer is that not borrowing is bad. What a crazy statement is all about. Not borrowing is bad. How is this? See, the equation is pretty simple, my friends. If your return on capital employed, as we discussed earlier, return on capital employed is higher than the cost of borrowing, right? If your return on capital employed is higher than the cost of borrowing, you are doing a mistake by not borrowing money. Provided, I hope it's clear to you, right? When your return on capital employed is more than the cost of borrowing, then you got to borrow. Why shouldn't you borrow? Provided you are running at a decent occupancy rate. Well, if you have not been utilizing your hospital, first of all, let's say you got about 100 beds and you're utilizing only 50 or 60 beds. I don't know why you should expand in the first place, right? But if you got a 70, 80% occupancy rate and return on capital employed is more than the cost of borrowing, absolutely no reason why you shouldn't borrow. People who haven't borrowed, haven't made it big, right? Because there has to be capital. There has to be capital coming in to make it. Now, which is costlier? Now, there are two kinds of capital, right? One is the capital in the form of debt, another in the form of equity. So many people ask us this question: should I go for some investor or should I go for some debt? Which is the right form of borrowing? Now, again, one important thing to understand here, I'm making a statement which is probably needs a lot more deliberation, a lot more discussion, but I'm just going to leave you with this statement here. Which is costly? Which is costly? Is debt costly or equity costly? Is investments into your company costlier or is borrowing money costlier for you? The regular answer that one may think of is that, well, debt is costlier, right? That's what's the typical answer that one may come out with. But in reality, taking money in the form of equity, diluting your stake in the company is far more costlier than borrowing funds. If you have the ability to borrow funds, right, without diluting your equity, please borrow funds. Please go ahead and borrow funds, so long as the return on capital employed is more than the cost of borrowing, right? Please go and borrow. There is absolutely nothing wrong in borrowing funds. So calculate your ROE, payback period, and run an asset-light business model, and go for brownfield expansion. Add more equipment than going for a completely greenfield expansion, right? That's always better. Now, what are the varied forms of borrowing here? Let me just quickly run you through the various forms of borrowing that are available out there. My friend did make a mention of it. Let me just expand this in a different way, put it in a different order here out here. So I hope this slide is visible to you. Let me just put it up on a slideshow here. So these are the varied forms of borrowing methods. So one is the form of equity and debt, as we just saw. If it's going to be the form of debt, it can be working capital finance. It can be bridge finance. Bridge finance is a short-term loan to help you bridge a particular period of financing shortfall. And the third one is term loan for expansion out there, right? So these are the three forms of borrowing. Working capital can be in the form of overdraft facility or CC facility, and term loans can be project loans or it can be mortgage loans. Therefore, go ahead and borrow money. Not borrowing is bad. That's the thought process that I want to leave with you. Not borrowing is bad so long as your return on capital employed is more than the cost of borrowing. Now, how much to borrow? That's the last question that I'm going to address in this session over here with you, my friends. How much can one borrow? Is there a limitation on how much one can borrow? Because the requirement is unlimited, right? If the industry is growing, if you got a huge population to address, you can grow as much as you want, but how much can you borrow? So there are many companies that have gone down the drain because they have over leveraged. They have borrowed much more than what they deserve, what they could do. So is there a limitation? I'll give one simple formula here, which is universally adoptable. A company I used to head Kotak Mahindra Bank for Tamil Nadu and Kerala about 16 years back. Was sanctioning authority there. I've seen literally about 700 lent money to 700 enterprises. Cumulative experience of lending to those companies is that a company can borrow up to about 3 times of your profits before depreciation and after tax. That is what we call the EBITDA, right? EBITDA minus tax. That is the cash profits. You can borrow money up to about 3 times of your cash profits. That's a maximum limit up to which ideally one should borrow. If you're going to be borrowing more than 3 times of your cash profits in a year, then my friends, you're going to be over leveraged. It's kind of a cat on the wall situation out there. Don't go over leveraged. Live within your limits, but don't go into a shell by not borrowing at all. You got to expand because we're in a fantastic country and we're going to be in a golden period in India where there is going to be a significant growth ahead for the next 10 years. Leverage that, leverage your businesses, grow your profits, multiply your revenues, raise growth capital for the same, and wish you all the very best ahead. Happy to take questions if any are there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. That was a very persuasive talk on leveraging the availability of financial assistance. In this situation, where I think it's the booming of all startups, I think. And and as you said, the key mantra, borrowing is not bad as long as the return of capital employed is greater than the cost of borrowing. And as long as we don't dilute the equity and keep it to a greenfield kind of a strategy. Thank you so much, sir. And everything is possible unless and until we manage and keep our book in order to come to a decision. On this note, I would like to introduce our third panelist, Mr. RAMU Mahalingam, Director, Corporate Finance, Sincere Syndicate. He will be talking on the reasons or when does borrowing lead to default, and as well as exercising prudence to prevent the above scenario. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I thank everyone for giving me this opportunity, and it's an exciting opportunity for me. Thanks a lot. My background is I'm a banker, basically, with an experience of over 25 years. Last 20 years, I was with a leading private bank, and in the 20 years, last 10 years, I was managing the healthcare business for entire South India. So I had managed a total book of close to 9,000 crores. So I had interacted with almost all the hospitals in entire South India, and I have interacted with almost all the entrepreneurs. And I have seen the customers who have grown from bottom to the top, and I have seen customers who have come from, who are doing well, coming to a very bad shape. So here, instead of explaining, I think my friend Shiva and my friend VENKATA very clearly covered in terms of, VENKATA has clearly told in terms of what are the loans, what are the type of loans are available, and what are all the good part and what are the bad part. And Shiva had very clearly communicated why to take a loan. And he has also clearly explained what is to be seen in the business, what is meant by EBITDA, and we have to look at the payback period, about the liability, etc. But even after doing all this, there are certain reasons for a business can go bad. So I wanted to cover 7 to 8 points in that. So it's a very big discussion. Like, you read a one-day type. It keeps on. We can keep on telling a lot of examples, and we can keep on discussing on that. But since the time is very limited, I wanted to cover it by points, and I'm happy to revert back to you in case if you have any questions. So these are all my experience. It's not it's a learning over a period of 10 years in healthcare. So for me, first point is too much of partners. So in healthcare industry, what happens is after gaining good amount of experience, the doctor will be working with some large corporate, and they will have a mindset of setting their own hospital. Similarly, they will identify a few other partners who are into similar thought process. So they will have a partnership, and they will start the entire business, and they will do well. They will start the business well. But what happens is, in most of the cases, there will be out of 5 to 6 partners, for example, The three partners will be doing extremely well. Their specialty must be extremely doing well, but the rest of the two partners may not give that kind of business, what is expected out of them. So this will definitely lead into a issue in terms of the doctors who are doing well will be clearly dominating the other doctors, which will end up in a quarrel between the doctors. So this is one of the points. Second point is the location. Location is very, very important. Whether you have the best of people, whether you have the best of equipment, you have the best of infrastructure, location is very, very important. The hospital is particularly should have the reachability. The access to the hospital has to be perfect. You should have all the modes of transportation. So the access is very, very important. Similarly, you have to set up the hospitals in a place where there is a supply is lesser than demand. If you set up a hospital in a location where already there are major players who are already established players, then you will have difficulty in terms of churning over your business there, and the payback period, the revenue projections will go down. So there, you will do, most of the people will do a mistake of identifying the location. Probably they must be owning a land property there, but without doing a proper study about the location, they will set up a hospital. By the end of the day, that is also one of the important reasons for business failure. And third point is lack of personal involvement. Many entrepreneurs, they are busy with so many social activities. So they will appoint people and they will not even know what is happening in their hospital. Whether which specialty is doing what, the doctor, what is the contribution by each and every doctor, what is the RBAC, whether there is an increase in RBAC. There are very few doctors who have interest in understanding in terms of the occupancy rate, in terms of the RBAC, in terms of the percentage of revenue contributed by department, the percentage of revenue contributed by the lab, percentage of revenue contributed by the pharmacy. So there are very few promoters who are totally involved them into the business. There are promoters who just put money and start like any other business. So without an involvement, everything will go for a toss. So this is also one of the important business reason. And the other point is the diversification of the business. So what happened, I think, is one of the points which Venkata has pointed out. When you have a good cash flow, particularly healthcare is an industry where you need a frequent investment. The machinery which you bought 5 years back may not be a good machinery for this point in time. You have to keep on investing in machinery, investing in people, and investing in creating an infrastructure. So most of the entrepreneurs, when they do well, they remove the cash flow from this business and will invest in some asset which they don't get good returns. So these are the mistakes they do. They go by their friends. They go by the business which they do not have any idea. Just for the sake of investment, they will go and invest, which definitely block their capital and which will not give any returns to business. So thereby, they will have a pressure on the liquidity issue. They keep on to manage the situation. They buy additional borrowing, which will definitely end up in a mess. And the poor financial structure, this is very, very important. Most of the entrepreneurs, doctors, they don't invest in good technology and they don't invest in good manpower. I'm sure we have a good amount of CFOs from large hospitals are there, and I'm sure they will agree with me. The entrepreneurs, they will appoint only a normal BCom guy or a guy with 5 to 10 years of accounts experience. They don't invest on people. So lack of investment on people will certainly take your business to a downturn. What happens is when you don't have a specific financial advisor or a good CFO, you have to go by what a banker says. The banker is always have a mindset of collecting his principal back. I think Venkat and Shiva has also explained about the take back period. In healthcare, you can't specifically tell the take back period is say 4 years, or a take back period is 5 years, or a take back period is 8 years. It depends on the kind of specialty, it depends on the location, and it depends on the asset which you are investing, which will clearly give a clarity about the take back period. So for any project loan, you should have a take back period of say minimum of 8 to 10 years, and you should have a structure where you take a holiday period of at least 1.5 to 2 years. Though you can able to break even in 1 year, it is always safe to take a holiday period of say 2 years, so that you will have good amount of free cash flow and you can easily repay the obligation. So one has to have a clear, detailed study in terms of structuring the finance. So this is possible only provided when you have an expert who can structure, who can understand the business first, and then understand the cash flows, and then he can negotiate with the banker and structure your finance project. And the lack of second line, this is a final point. In most of the business, what happens is there will be a lack of second line. Father would have started the business 25-30 years back, but their children may not be into this business. So what happens is the father would have invested huge money in the hospital, but the children, since they are not into medicine, since they do not have interest in medicine, they cannot be a good entrepreneur to understand the business from his father and take the business to the next level. So this is one point. The second point is, second line is always in corporate hospitals, in large hospitals, you will have, if you have too much of dependency on a particular consultant, the investment, say for example, you will have a cardiologist who is interested to join your hospital. So you have to provide the best of cath lab to this doctor. So you have to provide the state of art of theater for him to do his practice. Then only you can able to do business, and you can be able to meet out the competition requirement. But in most of the cases, what happens is, basis the doctor's commitment, entrepreneurs will go and invest heavily in infrastructure and heavily in large equipment. What will happen is the doctor, you may not know whether the doctor will be with you for about 6 months or 1 year or 2 years. In most of the cases, the business has come to a standstill. The business has made loss because of the consultant who has promised you has moved out after your investment to the other hospital. So I can keep on telling a lot of points, but since the time is very constrained, I'm sure everybody will have a lot of questions on your mind. So I want to certainly give sufficient time for you to ask your questions. So I'm sure, and our experience we have shared to you, and I'm sure it will be definitely helpful for you to think it over when you come out of this kind of situation. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a very fitting and pertinent dialogue on common mistakes made by the hospitals after getting financial assistance. Now I would like to invite Smita C. Kanakala, Managing Director, Indo-British Hospital, to share her experiences of what she as a a hospital CEO has gone through in this domain. Over to you, Smita.
Thank you, Shobana, and thank you, CAHO, for the platform. Quite humbled to be invited to this. I'm the MD of a small hospital, a 50-bed hospital in Vijayawada. We've been running it for 7 years. Everything that Mr. Phanidhar, Mr. SIVARAMAKRISHNAN, Mr. MAHALINGAM has mentioned about what should not be done is what we have done in our business as starting off. So when we started off the project, we came in as somebody from lived outside India for 14-15 years, come back to India, and we were motivated by our passion more than anything else, more than common sense, I would say. So we have actually not properly planned at the project planning stage. So for anybody who's venturing into healthcare entrepreneurship, wanting to start their own facilities, what I would advise them to do is spend time planning it properly. Invest time and invest in people who can actually advise you, be it legal, corporate issues, or financial issues at the very beginning of the project itself. And before you go in for any financial, maybe it's loan, any kind of equity or debt that you're planning to do, like how SIVARAMAKRISHNAN has mentioned, always look at your profitability to see if you can actually achieve. Do not go to that impulsive, go by the impulsive motivations like Mr. Phanidhar has mentioned. Be very practical in terms of your projections that you make, and then only and only go for debt that you can actually pay back. The rest of it, I mean, it has been a very insightful discussion so far. I'm seeing some questions on it. There are some questions that I had myself for the other panelists, but some of those are already mentioned in the questions. So I'm looking forward to it. Any questions or anything that, our journey has been quite up and down through COVID. We have seen good times, and we have also, we're also restructuring to see how going forward, what we will need to do. Unfortunately, I picked now the option would be to dilute our equity and going in with merging into a corporate chain. That is the journey that we are at as of now. But that is that decision we have come to it through a series of steps that we had to take, have to decide this is the right path for us at this point of time. So any questions, I'm happy to answer, but yeah, I'll let the rest of the panelists discuss.
Thank you so much, Smita, for sharing your experience, and we are really nice to have you here. I would like to now introduce Mr. Sudhakar Jadhav, COO of Oasis Fertility Center, to share his thoughts and experiences. I think they have just gone round with a round of funding. That's what I heard. Over to you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Shobana. I'm sorry I was on mute. I think Father Johnson, thank you so much for giving this platform. I think Venkat, Shivaram, Ramu, and of course Smita, they've kind of gave their perspective. Indeed, very, very insightful. I think a lot about from financing aspect to whether we should be taking loans or not. Or I think Shivaram has given a very good insight in terms of what kind of options which are available in the market today. I think what I'll do is, I actually Oasis, as Shobana rightly pointed out, that we have recently been funded and we have been invested by Kedara Capital. So in fact, we have seen our journey, right? About 5-6 years back, we were just about 3 or 4 clinics, and then today, if you look back, we are operating 30 clinics across the country. And then I think despite COVID, we have done our best, and then we have actually scaled up. Now, there are a couple of things when I have to really share our success story, or if I have to give my share of thought, there are a couple of things which I think I would like to make it very clear. Is your aspiration level, right? Where exactly you would like to go, or what exactly are you looking at, right? I also fundamentally, I would like to underline Smita's statement that she would like to, dilute her equity and, get into some larger chain. So I think those are aspirations, right? We need to look at our aspirations and see what is that we can do about it. I think from a business perspective, because I've been a very, very core ops guy, and then at the same time, financial discipline is something which I think has been, imbibed right from the beginning of, every organization where I worked. So a couple of things. I think being frugal is one of the key factors if you're operating a small business. You need to be very, very careful about your pricing strategy. That is something which is extremely important for small businesses. B, I think in terms of controlling your cost when you're running your business, in terms of there are 4 or 5 broad headers. I don't want to really get into the details. Probably the biggest issue which most of the hospital administrators face is with the doctor payouts today, right? I mean, the industry actually, if you look at the majority of the payment is actually given to doctors. No offense here. I know there are a lot of doctors here, but I think a majority of the share is actually gone to the doctors, and then there is your admin cost sitting there, your other people cost sitting there, and then if it all depends again on your aspiration, whether you would like to shell out about 3 or 4% of your marketing BD costs, or you're looking at about 8 to 10 aggressive marketing BD costs. It all depends, right? And then end of the day, what are you aspiring in terms of your EBITDA levels? Are you looking at a 15% EBITDA? Are you looking at a 20% EBITDA? I think it all weaves back to your strategy of your A, pricing, B, of certain things which you could do in-house, which you could outsource some of the things, right? I mean, for small businesses, if you ask me, it makes a lot of sense to outsource something like a pharmacy, right? I mean, sorry, not pharmacy, the investigation, the lab. You don't really have to include lab in your system at all, right? I mean, you can always outsource it. So I think these are some of the things where you can actually put tick marks or check marks in terms of how do you get your financial discipline in place, and then how do you look at your EBITDAs getting better. The second is your pharmacy. Pharmacy is most profitable. Of course, everybody would understand this. So do you have a kind of control in terms of the pharmacy? Because I think there are a lot of retail chain which actually give 10%, 15%, 20% discounts to consumers. So this is the biggest problem for a lot of small big chains today. Most of the prescriptions just gets leaked, and then only about 70-80%. Best of the hospitals, 70-80%. There are some of the hospitals where only about 40% of the prescriptions are actually honored. So I think these are some of the checkpoints where you could actually increase your efficiencies in terms of increase your top line, thereby a better yield fundamentally, right? And I think the biggest thing today, a lot of people who focus and they don't realize is the cost of acquiring a customer today, right? I mean, what is the kind of money which you're spending to acquire a customer or to even generate a footfall into the system today, right? I mean, what is the cost of a BD team member, or what is the cost of marketing where you're actually getting a patients inside the system? And what is the lifetime value of the customer is something which I think everybody has to look at nowadays, right? I mean, for instance, for a pediatrician, right? Or a neonatologist or a pediatrician, let's say, a 3-month baby is a customer for that pediatrician for about 14-15 years, right? And for a gynecologist, if somebody is coming at a let's say a menarche stage, so that patient is going to be a patient until the menopause, right? So next 30-40 years, the customer life cycle, I think one needs to look at. I think these are some of the key pointers where a lot of doctors, clinicians, or maybe even as administrator, we fail. We just look at a single transaction. The patient comes to us. We are very happy patient came to us. And then are we really tracking that patient? Are we really looking at a lifetime value out of that patient is something very, very important, because looking back, the cost of acquisition of a customer is extremely, extremely high nowadays, right? And it makes a lot of sense for us to kind of, get your repeat customer rather than trying to get a new customer. I think these are some of the perspectives which I really wanted to share in this forum. Fundamentally, I am not really from a core finance background, but actually I come from a lot of marketing and ops background. So I can, give a lot of insights on the consumer behavior and customer behavior, which actually links back to our revenues into the system.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your insight. Now we have a clinician, Dr. Kishore Junjunwala, who is the medical superintendent of Ford Hospital and Research Center, Patna. Over to you, sir. What are your thoughts and your experiences, sir?
Thank you, CAHO, and particularly to Shobana for this forum. And today I learned a lot from the speakers regarding the financial discipline. what my observation in this part of the state, what happened, so many hospitals, particularly on a low scale hospitals are there, they are run and created by the doctors. What is happening actually is my observation or is a fact here, 3-4 doctors from different discipline, they came together and they put their hard-earned money in the system, and they are really reluctant or hesitant in taking loan. And they started without any financial planning, what will happen. They have a thought in mind, we have a 10, 20, 30%, and we'll get the running cost. And once we earn, we'll invest more and we'll expense our business. So these kind of practices are there, and I found most of the doctors, most of the group of doctors have trapped in this kind of thought process. And at the end of the day, at the end of few years, they realize that was our bad decision. We are starting hospital. There are so many headaches, so many pressures. And even though we are not earning much better, it was better to have our own clinic and earning from our center. So these kind of bad discipline or bad investment, and I'm observing in this, particularly in our region, at least in Bihar. Nowadays, the good corporate hospital are there. Maybe they will learn. And what my suggestion is that doctor itself is not a good entrepreneur. So better if we want to decide for a hospital, take a financial assistance, call the expert of that, and then start running a hospital and plan the hospital according to your financial need and further expansions. Thank you from my side.
Thank you so much, sir, for your thought. I would like to now call upon Mr. Jayakumar, the COO of KG Hospital. Sir, if you're there, I know it is a trust-based hospital. So what are your thoughts on these? I would like to now ask Sam, the Vice President of CAHO and Managing Director of Dr. Mehta's Multi-Speciality Hospital, to share his thoughts.
I think this is thanks a lot, Shobana, and I think thanks to the many panelists. This has been an excellent conversation. I would have liked it to have been a bit more of a conversation rather than a lot of single shots, but I guess the nature of this is a lot of content was shared. I'll take, I think, one thing from what Mr. Sudhakar suggested, which is a lot of this is subject and dependent to what is your intent and vision. Based on the scope of your expectations, choosing whether you go down and what then Mr. Shiva suggested, whether it's debt versus equity, what type of equity participation you want. We've been investing in hospitals for quite some time independently, right? And what we've realized is a lot of the entrepreneurs we share time with, they're either not sophisticated or over sophisticated. There's very little in between, right? So there are some doctor entrepreneurs who actually, I don't joke about it, are worse than sharks. And there are a lot of entrepreneurs that are very noble-minded in their expectation and profession, and therefore they sometimes don't understand that equity in most cases is more expensive than debt, and there is a repayment cycle needed at some point. I think tied to what Mr. Venkat suggested, that if you can grow in a structured manner, leveraging things like the available funds from the government, looking at equipment loans, which are much lower cost in interest rate pricing than, for example, building facilities. I think that's a better way to go. We've been an investor in TVS Capital, which invested in a bunch of funds, Kaizen Private Equity, many other private equity funds. So I'll tell you honestly that many hospitals have lost their shirts to private equity. Sometimes they do really well, and there are examples. Rainbow has done well. Obviously, Apollo in the early days, Medanta, and a few of the others, but many of the hospitals no longer exist. I think Venkat knows about Global, doesn't exist in its old form anymore. Fortis doesn't exist in its old form anymore. So I think making sure you take the right type of capital to grow matters. Making sure you don't grow well above a vision that is addressable matters. I think the second piece that I have is remember that the best source of capital at the end of the day is your customer, right? If you can get suitable capital from your customers and you do it in a responsible manner where they respect you over generations, which is what I think we've managed to earn in Dr. Mehta's. We don't have third-party equity. We have our own capital. We've leveraged that into other things. And at the age of 90, we can honestly say that's quite an unusual thing, because most people who are over 50 have had to depend significantly on donations because they're either trust or charitable based for their growth, or they've had to depend significantly on third-party capital like equity in some cases, or they've gone public and therefore have different responsibilities nowadays. There's no right answer. There are just different answers, and what is specific to each individual institution and their aspirations is what matters. I think this has been a great conversation. I would ideally like to see a few more questions come in. I think there were some good questions about why is crowdfunding, for example, not a good source of capital for things. And we were an investor in CAHO, in fact, the first investor in CAHO. Most of you will know that as an organization that does crowdfunding for patients, right? Actually, it doesn't pay you that much. So even though we've had that investment in CAHO, we didn't make much money out of it. We wanted to enable the ecosystem. But the reality is most of these organizations at an enterprise level, they don't necessarily make that much. There are exceptions. HDFC Bank has minted lots of money. ICICI Bank has minted lots of money on taking loans to healthcare institutions. There are lots of venture funds that have been very successful. And I think making sure you find the right partner in your growth aspiration matters. But step one, find the right set of customers. If they're respected, you will continue to grow. And I think the advice that's available here through this CAHO ecosystem is fantastic. Feel free to ask more questions. In fact, resources like Venkat, resources like Smita with personal experiences, like Shiva and many of the others out here, Sudhakar, I think these are the right type of people to kind of like test a few of your ideas out or your thoughts. So I think a fantastic program, and I hope this has been eye-opening. I think Father Johnson and your team, and I think Shobana, very well done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you so much. Our panelists and CXOs have highlighted the importance of financial planning and discipline to keep the focus on growth. I think we all think both financial planning and discipline are two sides of the same coin. One cannot survive without the other for the health of the organization. As Sam pointed out, our capital lies with our customer who come back to you liking your service. Over to Dr. Father Johnson for the vote of thanks.
I think we have a bit overrun in time. Anyway, this was a very fruitful discussion, a great session. Thank you to Venkat, Shiva and Ramu and all who have taken part in the discussion. I was very curious to listen everyone because a lot of learnings in it. So you all did a great job. I think we all can take some really good input so that we can plan our future endeavors accordingly. So to Shobana again, a big thank you because you took all the trouble in getting, all these panelists, all.
The pleasure was mine, and I was like, behind them. I'm sorry, Shiva sir, Venkat sir, and Ramu sir, and all the CXOs, Smita, Yadav sir, Dr. Kishore sir. Thanks for spending your time with us. Sam. Of course.
Great, Shobana. Okay, so we conclude. Okay, thank you so much.
Take a photo.
Great